come down into number 2 guard. Keep in mind, don't be afraid. You got to touch the head. Unless somebody says, "Hey, I got a really sensitive scalp," they're not gonna. It's not gonna hurt. However, that being said, you don't want to dig into their scalp as hard as you can either, because some people do have sensitive skin, sensitive scalps. Now, as I come in with this shorter blade, as you notice, I'm not going up quite as high. I'm still doing the same thing. I'm still keeping my clipper straight. I'm not rocking it, scooping it, or curving it out or anything. If someone has, I've probably got, in my clientele, I have about 70% guys. And I probably have 4 or 5 of them that have some kind of little skin tag or mole or something on their head. And like I say, generally those guys will usually remember to tell you, but you want to feel for it, because you don't want to start cutting through their head and just bump it. You're not going to cut it with the attachments on. But if you go into the really, really short ones and you're taking the attachments off, that's a different story, obviously. But you can certainly irritate it and make it very uncomfortable for them. So please don't forget to check that out beforehand. Let me turn you around so you can see what's happening here.
Sobre lo importante de esta máquina es que usted, lo que está diciendo es muy importante para la que no entienden muy bien en español, digo en inglés, es que pueden tocar el cráneo y no van a tener ninguna irritación, les va a pasar algo. Normalmente algunas máquinas, cuando están muy calientes, sienten que se está quemando el cuero cabelludo, etc. Con este tipo de máquinas ustedes no van a tener ningún problema, lo pueden tocar el cráneo sin ningún problema, ¿ok? Eso quiero que lo sepan muy bien, porque otras máquinas que hay en el mercado normalmente se calientan tanto en la máquina que cuando ustedes pasan, hasta la persona, hasta el cliente se molesta. Con este no van a tener ese problema. De que se calienta lo que es normal de una máquina. Tampoco puedo mentir de que no se calienta completamente nada, porque sería una mentira, pero no van a sentir, con la nueva tecnología, no van a sentir cómo se calienta normalmente con otras máquinas, ¿ok? Thank you.
So as it comes down, you can kind of see there's maybe a little bit of, not quite a line, but it's a little lighter, a little darker. What you can do, because we're on the number 2 blade, this is where you can use your adjustable settings. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to pull that all the way out, probably a couple notches right about in the middle, just to slightly extend this length so it's a little bit shorter than an actual tube. And come back right on that little spot there. Let's see if that'll soften out just a tiny bit. That's all I want, is just a tiny bit of blending right there. But that's doing the trick, I think. Just a little bit. Excellent. So that's our number 2. Most guys, if they don't want some kind of fade or anything like that, that's usually about as short as you're going to go. You can go a little tighter, a little closer. We'll do that. We'll do that in the finishing, just to kind of show you an option of that. But let's go back and smooth everything else out on the top. Now, on this gentleman's length, on Manny's length, we could go in and shorten this up a little bit by using one of the other clipper attachments. So let's do that, just to give you a little insight on the longer size. Both of these, like I say, go up to a number 6 with the attachment size. I'm going to come in with the biggest one, the number 6.
Es muy importante que sepan que con esta máquina, la que está usando ahorita, hasta el nivel 6 tiene el attachment número 6, que puede hacer texturizar el cabello sin que se vaya a apretar el corte o el estilo que están usando. O sea, hasta desde el 1 hasta el 6. Son 6 diferentes attachments. Lo que está haciendo ahorita es, lo que estaba explicando, va a usar el número 6 para hacerlo más textura porque el cabello es demasiado corto y no quiere que pierda el estilo. ¿Ok?
So this is a 6 where the blade is closed. I'm just going to come all the way up into this just to see if we can get a little more blending to happen. Now, of course, you would only be able to do this when you have short hair that you're working with. If it's longer hair, you're going to come in with scissor over comb and do it that way. And you always want to follow, especially when it's short like this, you can see the direction that it's growing. So I'm going to follow that. I'm going to totally the opposite way to pick that hair up a little bit. And you can hear it, it's cutting a little bit off, which is good. We want just a little bit. So that's a 6. Remember what I said? Always start with the longer. That barely took anything off, but it took something off. We played it safe. Now we're going to go just one more size lower to the 5. And come back and do the same thing. And now, as we start working at this length, obviously I'm following the shape of his head. I'm not continuing to do this straight up because we're getting into the shorter length. But you can see it's starting to blend it out a little bit better with that color change. And it's a little nicer than the harshness that we had. But as we all know, and as he knows, that color is, you know, until he goes back and touches it up, you're going to have a little bit of noticeable change to it. So, I know that this has not got enough power right now, so I'm going to keep it plugged in. This comes free with the purchase of the Ferrari clippers together. Am I right? It's still together.
No here.
Huh?
No here.
Not here.
We don't got that promotion.
I'm so sorry. Strike that. That was a special way back.
Let me find out.
Yeah, put it here.
Okay, way at the end, but because I'm not sure, I need to talk to Eric.
Okay.
Okay, so I need to be sure.
Anyway, these are great clippers. These come with 2 different size blades. They have the narrow one and they have the wider T-blade. They cut really close. I like these tremendously, and they're relatively quiet. Sometimes these little things can get really loud. So when you're coming around guys' ears, don't go too deep in the hairline. You just want to follow the natural hairline wherever that is. Because if you go up too high, too short, it starts looking a little funny. I like to come in with my comb and just see if I've missed any little hairs there. And then you can clean that edge up, like so. Same thing around the back of the ears. I'm just coming in where his hairline is. I'm not going deep into it. Pretty simple. Now when it comes to the shape of the back of the neck, it's always a good idea to ask the clients, do you have a particular shape that you like in the back? Only occasionally will some people be really firm about how they want it to look. Most guys are like, whatever looks good. You know, you're the professional. That's what we want to hear. If they don't have a preference, it's always best to follow the natural shape of the hairline. Unless they've got, unless it's a client who wants it to look a little different or a little funky, you can totally be creative at that point. You can come in and do some designs or whatever if you wanted. But in general, we just want to follow the natural shape. Which, he's got a pretty good hairline. A lot of guys and girls, it gets kind of funky back there sometimes. And you get a swirl, and it's going this way and that way, or it all grows to the center. In that case, if it's a really strong point, just keep that, whatever that is, just clean it up. Unless they want you to make it squared off in the back, keep the original shape to it.
What do you recommend? Because some people has a lot of hair all around the neck, so sometimes I don't know how to make the shape in the back.
If it comes down too long?
Yes. It's hard to make.
Good question. You always want to follow, come off of this line behind the ear. Where is that? Right there.
Natural.
Yeah. So say for instance, his hair just suddenly grows around like that.
Right.
Wherever that shape is right here behind the ear, just come about, just try and match wherever that is right there. That corner, there's a little bone, I forget the name of that bone. But you want to kind of come off of that line right there. Just take it slightly angled. You can move it a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfectly, but that's kind of pretty much the area that you want to stay within. And if you look, his is pretty straight. I could take a little more off that. I might. It's not. It's really to your own discretion back there. But if you're confused and there's nothing to go by, just kind of a slight angle coming off that bone right behind the ear is good to go. Now, if they say, oh yeah, I want it square in the back, generally that shape is you're not going to tilt that out too far. You're going to make it a little more straight down so it is a little more of a square shape. If they like a more of a rounded, or they have that natural hairline that grows into a point, those are usually pretty round naturally. So that's the only time that you would take that line back a little bit so that it's more of a curve. I usually, and if you don't know, another good way to do this, if there's just really hairs everywhere and you don't know where to go with it, there's always going to usually be, like his, a little bit of a spot there that doesn't grow or it stops. That's a good guideline to go by with men's necklines. So you can come in with this and go, okay, well that's a nice, I like to go in and I just angle that a little bit. See how I've got an angle? And I stop right there just to kind of clean up anything loose. You don't have to do that, but that's a nice thing to do. And I follow that line right there. I come straight around. Just like that. Now we take this little point off. It's always best, if someone is really unsure about how they want their neckline shape, it's always better to start out square, because from square you can always round more. When there's more hair to work with, there's much more to change if they don't like it. Now remember again, when I mentioned guys with moles and skin tags, a lot of time you'll see this on the neckline especially. So make sure you feel and see it. If it's just a little bump, like acne or zit or something like that, you can usually very gently go over that. Don't push on it. Just use the weight of the clipper and just let it glide over it. If it's something like that. If it's a skin tag, don't. You will cut that thing off. It will bleed everywhere, so don't do that. Just go around it the best you can. And don't be embarrassed or like, oh my God, what do I do? They will thank you for taking that time to go around and not cut them. I can assure you of that. Always stand back and kind of take a look at it so you can see the overall shape. You can always come back, cut it a little, make sure you didn't miss anything. And once again, I'm not pushing very hard. I'm pushing into it a little bit, you can see, but I'm not going deep. Please don't turn these things around and gouge into the client's skin, because that will hurt badly, I can tell you. Some guys are a little tougher skin. I'm not one of those, and man, I feel it when someone cuts my hair. You really only should ever hold it at the end and let the weight of the head, see, I'm not putting any pressure on it. That's all the pressure you need. It's not going to cut any closer by you pushing into it. When you start pushing into it, you may very well bite the skin and may nip it just a little bit. So keep that in mind. Gentle back there. So that's pretty simple. But just come in and anywhere that it looks a little bit thick, we're just gonna, I'm keeping that same, remember with the clippers, I said go straight up their head. I'm doing the same thing with the comb. I'm going straight up the head, I'm not rounding it. Wherever that blend area is, you can see there's just a couple strands here and there. You can also do this with regular shears. I find it, as a beginner with clipper cutting, it's a little safer to use these. See that right here is a little bit heavy for us, so we're just gonna come in and soften that just a little bit. And you can already tell that's almost gets a little smoother blend for us there, just by doing that. These are your best friends though, seriously, for doing, when you get into this area, whatever length you're dealing with and you want to blend, you gotta use some thinning shears, texturizing shears, something will get rid of that heavy weight line. And then the top, whatever, like I said, if we had longer hair, you would come in and match this up. Of course, we all know how to grab the hair. If you see, if you have anything hanging over, you would come in and clean that up to blend it into the top. So any questions on any of this? Pretty simple. Okay, I'll show you a little bit more. If we want to clean this up just a little bit shorter. So we went down with the number 2 blade. So when you have the clippers and the adjustable arms, with that blade closed, whatever size attachment you have, that's going to be 1, 2, or 3. We got a 1. This is a 1. When you take this blade, the blade adjuster, and you open it all the way up, you've got pretty much a 1 3/4. You almost go to a number 2 just by opening that blade all the way. And so anything in between that, so if this is closed, we have a 1. We bring that into the middle, you've got about a 1 1/2. So that allows you to start doing those really short, smooth, tapered haircuts where you go all the way down to the skin, which of course is an advanced for the advanced class later. But this is a pretty easy fix. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my number 1 blade and I'm going to open it all the way as far as it'll go, create that more of that space, like the diagram here, before I break something. So we come in with the 1 1/2. And if you're unsure about it, just go about a 1/2 inch up. Now this is where we do, and the only time that we start using that scooping motion, little bitty scooping motion, is when you get into this. It's not really cutting much. It's cutting a little, so I'm going to go a little higher. Just a little tiny bit higher. And really, it's not going to be that noticeable, but I tell you, if you take this little extra step, it'll go out better. Now when you come around to the sides here, we're going to cut on the angle. We're going to cut on just this edge of our clipper, just the side here. So you want to come in, so you've been cutting like this, so now I'm going to tilt this, come right into his hairline here. I'm going to tilt that and go right behind his ear, just up a little bit, where it barely takes anything off. Come in, hit his sideburns. Guys, usually you can take sideburns a lot shorter. As you can see, that'll go in nicely. I'm going to do the same thing all the way around his ear. See how I've got that tilted? I'm just using about my finger's width of this blade to do that with. Just around the edge. It just gives it a little cleaner, fairly tapered edge so that it grows out a little bit better. It's kind of like putting your own little signature on it a little bit. Come the sideburn. Now see, all right, I'm going to show you this here.